Here we are back at it once again. We are
sir.
live.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi to Leandro in the chat.
You sound mellifluous.
Thanks. Beautiful.
So, we got to start. I got to ask you, like, how you been doing? Because the first question I had in my mind when Francis died is he was hated by most of the Catholics I know. And certainly, well, I don't know, maybe hate's the wrong word. You can correct me on that. But certainly there was tremendous disdain for opposition to Pope Francis as Pope among many, many Catholics, I suppose, I guess you could say, on the conservative or traditional side.
Yeah.
And which I think constitutes quite a large percentage of Catholics globally, but I don't know. So, I mean, certainly among like based American Catholics, and I think you're one of those, he was a bad guy. So what do you do if you're like if you're Catholic and have that kind of politics and the Pope is this pinko commie type, and then when he dies, like, because you're supposed to feel sad, right? Are you supposed to feel sad?
9 days of mourning.
So you are sad.
Yeah.
And you've been sad for the whole time?
Well, he was sick for a long time, and I thought when he was announced sick, I thought he'd be dead a few months ago. So I've kind of emotionally processed everything already. I'm not particularly attached to the guy in that he's a person I've never met. I could see how people would be attached to John Paul II single-handedly defeating communism, or I could see how somebody like could be attached to Pope Francis. Like, if I'm not a Pope guy, what I don't like about it is how the media reports on it. Is how, I mean, by all means, the guy was a sweet dude, and I think the media reports on the Pope as if he's like the president. Their only frame of reference is American politics, and they project this onto the rest of the world. They think that the head of any other institution is like the American president, and that the inner fights between it are just like political politics in America. They don't take any time to learn another culture. They don't take any time to... They're incapable of thinking religiously, so they don't know what his actual role and responsibilities are and how people look at him who practice the faith. All they care about is American political, however it relates to American politics at the moment, whatever the current thing is. And they greatly take his statements out of context, make them sound way more controversial than they actually are.
Oh,
yeah. If you actually read his sermons, he's a pretty traditional guy. You could have the worst pope in terms of personal character, but usually the teachings are the same faith that have existed for 2,000 years. And Pope Francis was a freewheeling pope. He wasn't as careful and calculated as Benedict was. Benedict was more of an academic. And so the critics of Pope Francis usually say it's unfortunate that some of his statements are confusing. That's the kind of criticism you'll hear from people who actually take their faith seriously. And then, I'm getting asked in the chat if I'm a sedevacantist. No, this stuff is all above my pay grade. I don't think that the Pope is illegitimate. I think the Pope is the guy. He's an administrative figure. He's running the church. I'm not with Mel Gibson in that there was some secret illegal election that happened 50, 60 years ago. That's just too kooky for me. It's
with Vatican II. Vatican II, is that the theory?
It's what was it? Whatever Pope was elected in the 50s. Whatever Pope was elected in the 50s. They're saying that there was like 3 or 4 ballots that happened, like 3 or 4 smokes going white and black, and something, and that means that actually this Pope that came out that time isn't the real Pope, and that he chose a name of another fake schismatic pope.
But isn't that conspiracy theory an attempt to explain Vatican II, which wasn't it early
a little
60s?
bit? Yeah. And also, Vatican II.
And the turn, and for people who don't know, Vatican II is basically the signal, I suppose, that the church was moving to the left in many ways, right? And has more or less remained there with some ups and downs since then, but and especially with Pope Francis, right? So you don't believe any of that shit. You just think it was like an organic.
I think,
I mean, because before him was Ratzinger, who was a super right wing guy.
Yeah, and before him was John Paul
and John Paul, as you just said, but especially Benedict. I mean, I thought he was intellectually one of the most interesting popes.
Yeah,
Benedict, even though I found some of his stuff to be pretty scary, but no, highly interesting, intellectual.
No, faith is terrifying. It's the scariest thing there is. It's
right wing, baby. But listen, do you know this story? I just heard this, so I'm not sure this is right, but the story of Francis in his early years in Argentina.
Which one?
Well, I just heard this, I think today or yesterday, that he began his career, I suppose, in politics as a priest in the 70s in Argentina, when the government was organizing death squads to kill and torture communists and socialists, etc., which was going on throughout Latin America, and that Francis, I forget his original name, but that at the time, so he was a young priest, I guess, and he collaborated with the government in finding, rounding up, and murdering, assassinating, or imprisoning and torturing many communists, I guess, who were also within the church and a liberation theology, I'm sure, was part of this. The left, the very left faction in the Catholic Church, which began, I believe, in Latin America and had a very powerful adherence in Argentina in particular. So I think he was pointing to, turning in, snitching on these left-wing Catholics in Argentina who ended up getting tortured and shot in the face by government death squads. But now the thing is, again, I just heard this, I don't know if it's true, but I believe he has said that his entire life and career subsequent to that has been an attempt to atone for that he has felt tremendous guilt about having done that, and that his move to the left and sort of you could say sort of a squishy humanitarian, don't kill the children left, which is fine. I like that a lot more than the communist left, but has been, I think from his words, an attempt to, as I said, to atone for what he did as a young man in Argentina. What do you think? Is that right?
I've heard that story. The version of it I heard was that he received a lot of criticism for not being a critic of the government at the time while they were doing that, and that he helped turn people in thing was more of a rumor. I don't know about that in particular. I think it's just whoever had his position at that time and wanted to keep breathing would have to be in a position, I think, like that. But I don't know, but my instinct is they didn't turn people in, but it's entirely possible.
Well, I mean, you're right though. Lots of priests across Latin America were assassinated in the 70s and 80s during those wars, those dirty wars between communist insurgents and the governments who were always backed by the United States. El Salvador comes to mind. I mean, a lot of priests and nuns were murdered in the Salvadoran Civil War, which, of course, by the way, gave rise to MS-13, which we should talk about at some point. MS-13 is an entirely American creation, from American policies in the 1980s in particular, sending weapons and money and training to the Salvadoran government, which was highly repressive, but it was facing this major communist insurgency, the FMLN, which it was backed by Cuba and the Soviet Union, and were hardcore Stalinists who would have imposed a brutal authoritarian regime if they had won. Reagan decided to pump, as I said, money and weapons and training into the Salvadoran government, who then carried out a lot of horrific executions and assassinations and atrocities, murdering entire villages, it was an incredibly murderous war and highly disruptive, of course, for the people who lived in El Salvador. And that is what caused many Salvadorans to flee to the United States as refugees in the 1980s. And at first, the administration, Reagan, US government let them in, and most of them moved to Los Angeles in the 1980s and 1990s. And when they got there, they faced a whole lot of discrimination and racist discrimination from the black gang, because they lived in the South Central and in East LA, where the Bloods and the Crips and Mexican gangs were very well established. And these young guys from El Salvador who were war refugees show up in LA in the 1980s amid this, and this was the crack epidemic too, right? And so there was just a high degree of violence in the hood where they lived, and they were attacked by the Mexican gangs and the black gangs who wanted to get them out of there as potential rivals. And so they founded MS-13 as a self-protection gang at first. They got successful in the drug market because drugs were illegal, which meant that drugs were extremely expensive, which meant that you could make a hell of a profit margin if you were willing to kill people. It's the story of drug criminalization. Anyway, MS-13 was born in Los Angeles. This is not controversial history I'm giving you. Everyone agrees on this. In Los Angeles in the 1980s, because of the United States policy of fomenting war in El Salvador. And then MS-13 adopts these notorious tactics to differentiate themselves and make themselves in some ways superior and more scary and intimidating than the Bloods and the Crips and the Mexican gangs who they were competing with. So they adopted actual Satanism and the kinds of tactics of executing people and torturing people that we've heard about. All true. Beheading people, just the worst stuff. They're like the ISIS of gangs. But they began because, as I said, U.S. foreign policy toward El Salvador. They began because drugs are made illegal by the United States primarily in this hemisphere. And they became a gang because of the racism, I'm not blaming the government for this one, but the racism and the violence. I guess, yes, we can blame the government for creating conditions in which the drug wars were happening in the 80s, meaning that they made drugs illegal. The government, there's just no question. The United States government, if it did not exist or did not enact the policies that I'm talking about, I don't see how MS-13 would exist. I think it's entirely a creation of the United States. I'm not saying the guys in MS-13 had no agency. What I'm saying is they had very narrow choices that were dictated essentially by, again, the policies of the United States government and, cooperation of the Salvadoran government too, for sure. But the Salvadoran government wouldn't have done any of these things if not for the United States making them our client. So MS-13 forms as a gang, becomes especially brutal in the 1990s, starts to establish its own turf, its own markets and drugs, and then moves into prostitution, other things. But mostly, again, all these gangs are based on drug revenue because drugs are illegal. And then they start getting deported. So during the Clinton years, Clinton, who sounded a lot like Trump on immigration, by the way, in fact, he sounded exactly like Trump on immigration, as did Biden, the vice president. They started deporting people.
As did Obama
criminals,
in 08.
And then Obama too, correct, yeah. And Obama deported more people still than Trump has. But anyway, so they started deporting these Salvadoran MS-13 gang members in the 1990s. This is Bill Clinton. So they move all them back to El Salvador now that they're an established paramilitary gang. And they proceed to take over huge swaths of Salvadoran life. And that's the world that Bukele inherited when he became president. So for about 30 years there, 20 to 30 years, El Salvador very famously was, gang-ridden, crime-ridden, murder-ridden, horrific in many ways. And so Bukele comes along and says, I'm going to clean this all up and do a very American thing, which is to build a gigantic prison to house all of the people that our policies made into criminals. And so there you go. That's where we are. And that's where, I guess, a bunch of guys who have nothing to do with any gang or even have anything to do with El Salvador in some cases find themselves. They are now in that prison with no due process because Trump is a fucking racist. And I don't see any other way around this. I just don't. And by racist in this case, I mean sort of like broad assumptions about national groups, not necessarily racial or ethnic, but, I think it's all sort of conflated in the minds of the typical MAGA head. That, you're Salvadoran, you have some tattoos, which may or may not be bad. You wear baseball hats. We don't. That smells bad to us. I just don't see any other explanation for this. Again, I get Trump's motivation for having lots of revenge. I get it against the liberal elite. I get a lot of what he's done against the law firms that went after him, against the media that went after him. I do, even though it's still unconstitutional and authoritarian and bad. But at least I get the motivation. I simply don't get the motivation against these quote illegal migrants. And I've been arguing with MAGA heads on Twitter for a few days about this. It's just I don't see anything other than like sort of a what is it like they're allergic without having known these people, without having ever experienced any crime or anything really from an illegal immigrant other than them making tacos for them and landscaping the yard in their housing complex for them and all the millions and millions of things that illegal immigrants do every single day to make our lives better. We forget about that. And also we know that illegal immigrants have the lowest crime rate, the lowest homicide rate among all the social groups in the United States. They have a lower crime rate than Black Americans, not surprising, but they have a lower crime rate than, yes, MAGA heads who've been saying this to me, white Americans. You can look it up. The crime rate among white Americans is higher than the crime rate among illegal immigrants, including the homicide rates. Of course, why would you go through all that trouble of breaking into this country, risking your life, your livelihood, all the rest of it, to come here and just commit crime? Yes, sure, some psychopaths and sociopaths filtered in, and I've known personally, God knows, dozens of illegal immigrants. I've employed illegal immigrants in the past. But you can just look at the numbers. They're here. Why? To work, to make money, period. They're completely economically motivated. There is no good argument. I think if you left, I know this, if we deported all American citizens, all of us, all American citizens, and let all the illegal immigrants stay in the United States, the murder rate and the crime rate would be cut in half. I mean, what are we talking about? And you don't like food from other countries? Do you know that Salvadorans staff almost every fancy restaurant kitchen in the country? Anthony Bourdain talked about this. He said, if you deport all the Salvadorans tomorrow, there will be no more French restaurants, which I guess I get it.
Yeah.
MAGA people don't go to French restaurants. I know they don't go to, I know.
He also said,
what?
Yeah. He also said the only hope for our country is if all white people cease to exist and we all become brown. Like he was an anti-white racist. Yeah.
I'm talking about the place of illegal immigrants, in particular Salvadorans, and the American national economy. Do you like Panda Express? Guess who's running that walk? He's some dude from El Salvador for sure. They are all over the place doing essential labor that Americans don't want to do. Clearly,
they are doing jobs that teenagers used to do. These are jobs that used to be reserved for teenagers entering the job market to get experience.
Right, but they're much better at it than teenagers. So your food's actually good now.
Okay.
Seriously.
I think Trump is making a calculated move here. He knows that he was elected to deport tens of millions of people. He was, Biden let in 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants. There's a large number of reasons why we don't want illegal immigrants in this country, why the American public, the American voter, the American worker doesn't want tens of millions of illegal. It's the issue that I know.
I want them.
I'm talking about you're in California though. That's not really a real place.
Not
I'm talking
not
about
the not the handful of murderers. Of course, I don't want them to deport those guys for
So,
sure. But
yeah.
the millions, Oh yeah, I want
Mhm.
all the rest of them, which is 99% of them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's about. I mean, I don't know. What he's doing now is he's trying to make a public display of deporting the people that everybody would agree are criminals. He's making a very public display of being aggressive against crime because his hands are locked on doing the actual mass deportations that he was elected to do.
Yeah.
And it's a little sloppy, sure, but it's just his strategy now to remain popular and to look like he's actually accomplishing something. What were the numbers? Like 500,000, he said, were people with a criminal record before entering. That's his estimate. And we haven't seen anywhere near that level of deportations yet. It's been absolutely minimal. And the thing is, like, it's coming to the defense of these non-citizens who, for the most part, do have criminal ties. The high-profile case with Garcia did end up having pretty obvious criminal ties. The guy had a domestic violence restraining order against him. The reason why they kept him in the United States was because it was too dangerous for him to go back to El Salvador because rival gang members would kill him. That was like the justification for him remaining in the country. So
you're just off about that.
Okay,
you're just flat
off.
Yeah,
that's their justification.
Number one, a restraining order by a wife. What does that mean? That means he's a gangster.
That means
how many listeners have had a restraining order? A lot of men have. Okay, not me, but a lot of men have. That doesn't mean anything. In fact, we know that women often use that as a tactic when they're trying to get a divorce to get a better settlement. But even if he did hit her or whatever, so what? Does that mean he's a gangster? Would I want him deported?
No, his gang tattoos mean he's a gangster.
Oh my God! Wait, really?
I know.
You believe
it's kind
that
of a lame thing. I mean, I believe his case is pretty cut and dry. Him in particular. The White House released a ton of documents on this. I trust their documents as much as anything else. And yeah. And again, the justification is he can't go back because it's unsafe for him because rival gangs.
So you know that marijuana leaf, smiley face,
cross,
crucifix.
Well,
and
Jesus, but
and cross and a skull.
Yeah,
you know that's how MS-13 represents MS-13. Itself.
No, I have no idea. I trust.
No, we know that's bullshit because what is MS-13 maybe most famous for other than its beheadings? Most famous for tattooing in giant fucking letters on their foreheads, MS-13. Sorry.
Yeah. I know the tattoo thing is a dumb look because kids have been through DARE and they remember like 8-year-old kids being told not to wear blue because that's a gang color. Like it does remind the American public of that hysteria they were brought up with. But in general, I think this guy passes the smell test of somebody that most American citizens would not care if they're in the country or not.
He was a day laborer.
Let me pull up the document.
Getting jobs. Yeah, dude, I've gone through all of this. Unless you know something that's just been released, I've been through the entire Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. I've read and watched every single thing. It's cut and dried in the opposite direction. The Supreme Court voted 9-0 against the Trump decision to do this and called for Trump to bring him back. The Supreme Court 9-0. It's
was that the same case as last week, or is that the new?
And then there was another one that was 7-2. Yeah, they voted twice on this case, and they voted twice against Trump.
I kind of agree with Stephen Miller's classification on what that first Supreme Court case meant. But yeah,
man alive. You really just don't like pupusas at all, do you? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, I really hate yummy treats. That's what I base my policy on.
Is it too spicy for you? Is it too spicy? Is that the problem?
Again, the negative stereotypes. White people can't season their food.
The fuck, man.
Yeah.
No, Michael, seriously, man, this is not good. Now, also, like, give me okay. If they had simply deported him to El Salvador, which absolutely is his native nation of origin, just took him to El Salvador and let him, fine. I mean, I'd still be like, in principle, because I'm an open borders guy, against it, but I can't be mad about that. Sure, because legally and every other way, there's nothing sadistic about that. There's nothing vindictive about it. There's no attempting to prove a political point by destroying the life of a man who may or may not be guilty. None of that. Just because, fine. But this is not what happened. He was deported. I mean, finally, because of Van Hollen, he got moved out of there, but he was deported into a gulag with having been convicted of no crime. And he was put there not because the Salvadorans cared about him as being a criminal, because Trump told Bukele to put him in the Sikot prison, which is a slave labor camp. You know that, right? Like, it's not just a prison. It's, they are forced to, okay.
Yeah, but work makes you free. Yeah.
No, but wait, come on now. That's not okay, is it? Like, deporting him, I wouldn't argue terribly strenuously against you if you just called for him to be deported, just deported. Sure, fine. But to be put in that prison as a political demonstration of this attempt to intimidate immigrants, by the way, that's all that was. He was trying to scare potential immigrants to the United States from coming here. But wait, dude, come on now. You can't be for that. That's not okay.
Again, Bukele is the most popular president amongst his own people. This is a widely successful program. I am totally okay with things going in this direction. Like, it's okay. I mean, I'm not like, I'm not doing this. I'm not getting my panties in a bunch over it. Yeah.
Do you know what happened? Do you know what happened to people with German surnames in 1917?
I know. We had to pretend that we weren't a thing. We had to
locked your white ass up with no due process and no habeas corpus.
Yeah, but
or deported them, or mostly just locked them up because the United States didn't have the resources to ship people out.
Again, he's a citizen of El Salvador. If Bukele believes that this guy's innocent and safe, it's totally up to him to release him. It's in Bukele's hands now. It's not in our hands. What he's trying to do is a massive symbolic thing to address a problem. And like, there's an asymmetry here in how administrations work, because it's very easy to do what Biden did and not enforce immigration at all and let 10 to 15 million people come in. It's very easy to do that. And it's impossible to get rid of those people. So if this gets allowed to continue, you get the teeter-totter forever. Tens of millions of people get brought in. Citizenship completely erodes. These people end up voting. These people... It's the Democratic...
For Trump, apparently.
I know. Trump won Hispanic men. Trump won Hispanic men. True.
Because they're a bunch of patriarchs.
I'm all for a path to citizenship. I know that these people are culturally conservative, and I agree with them on a lot of things, and I like them a lot. But you can't just have a completely lawless border and have only one side be able to affect their policy.
Can I ask this, please? I've been trying to ask this on Twitter, and it's the answers have sort of proved my suspicion. Exactly how have all these illegal immigrants negatively affected you, or us, or me, or America? I'm still looking. All I've heard about is that this guy and this guy and this guy committed some horrible murder.
No,
which are terrible. But again, they're less likely to commit murder than native-born Americans. So
that's I don't trust the methods of determining that. I feel like it's a unknown. I think it's kind of hard to track people.
Doesn't it stand to reason that if you're an illegal immigrant, you'd be especially cautious about obeying the law?
But there's also organized crime around getting people across the border illegally. And so I'm suspicious of how much
you're
of
talking
that
about
is.
you're talking about giving people a ride. Yeah, that's illegal. That should be bad. That's bad too.
It's
That's what Abrego Garcia was. He was accused of human trafficking for giving 7 dudes he lived with a ride across state borders so they could get a job or go to their job. Like, what in the world? Like,
okay.
Was he a slave driver? He's holding a gun to their head and he was he was giving them a ride. This is what human trafficking usually is. I'm not kidding. 95%+ of human trafficking is people offering transportation for a fee. That's it. Like, if you're an illegal immigrant, you can't get a driver's license, so you have to have someone drive you. This is obvious shit.
They get counted at the census, so California gets more representation. If there's one thing I'm opposed to, it's California having any representation at all. They get counted in the census. They vote in states like California.
For Trump.
Not.
What are you worried about? You should want more Mexicans and Browns. You should want to flood the place with Browns.
Look, I'm not the person bringing up their race here. I'm not seeing this as a racial thing at all. I've never seen this issue ever in racial terms.
How about a cultural thing? We agreed that Latin American culture, generally speaking,
has a lot of things I like about it.
It's closer to Trump's way of thinking and MAGA's way of thinking than liberals' way of thinking, and that's why they've been voting increasingly for Trump and Republicans. In fact, was it a majority this time? I think it was a majority.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was a majority of Hispanic men.
Right.
Not women. And it was a slim majority.
It's because they don't let their women vote, which is why Trump should like them much more. Dead serious. Catholics. My God, what's not to like if you're a right winger? They work like dogs. They work like dogs, and they never speak. Like, I've lived in the biggest American cities my entire life. That's all you see. Illegal immigrants like huddled together, either in a kitchen in a restaurant, or cleaning somewhere, or landscaping, or taking care of someone's kids. And then they'd be on the subway, like a group of them, like just huddled together, speaking Spanish in hushed tones, trying to be inconspicuous because they don't want to get picked up by ICE. And that's all they do. And they send their money back home. Or they don't, whatever. They work like dogs and they just don't do a damn thing. And they commit crime less than we do. More illegal immigrants, fewer Americans would make for a safer America.
Yeah, I don't vote based off of like
a more productive, wealthy America, because these people actually work, unlike the rest of us.
I vote for my interests, my personal interests, not like some utilitarian ideal, some scientific ideal of. Because, like, if we killed us all, then there'd be no crime, right? So if we all just committed suicide, there'd be no crime, and that'd be the perfect world. But I think it's wrong to deprive their country of origin from these great workers. I think it's a very racist thing to suck up all these wonderful, talented people from the rest of the world. I
think morality. Yeah. I mean, I do have like my own. I have a Christian heart, as we know, so I do feel that in these cases. I do. But like, forget that. Disregard that. Call me a pussy for that. I mean it. I want you and everybody who thinks like you to just think of this in totally self-interested terms.
Yeah.
Now, if you really just like are interested only in what Applebee's has to offer, then yeah, you probably should be against immigration in general, not just illegal. I mean, because you're not. And there are a lot of Americans who just
I don't totally think you're giving me a chance to articulate my point here. I
know you're an Afro-Cuban percussionist. I know you don't feel this way. No, I'm saying that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I am in like illegal immigration is a slap in the face to everybody who came in here legally. Also, I want our system to work transparently, and I want it to work for the people who are here. I want the priorities of the citizens to be prioritized. I don't want this broken system where people could sneak in, get on a pathway to citizenship, get certain privileges, especially in states like California, that other people have. I think, immigration should be transparent, legal. I think we should incentivize the most talented people to come through. But what we've had is a Democratic administration trying to get as many people across lawlessly to transform parts of the country that they don't like, and to go against the interests of people who came in here legally and who have been here legally forever. Yes, I have more in common culturally with Latinos than I do with WASPs. And yes, I probably agree with Latinos more than I do with WASPs. But the country has to work the country has to like actually be transparent and work. You can't have this lawlessness. And the Trump administration has been put in a predicament where they have to clean up this mess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how sacred is the law to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not the law necessarily. It's just social order. It's trusting the system. It's a feeling that justice exists. Like there's unease when people think that certain people are getting unfair advantages, and that it would be better to not follow the rules. I want the rules of a society to be transparent and for the people who follow them to be rewarded. And so,
okay, the rule of law.
Yeah, I mean,
is the principle you're foregrounding, you're prioritizing.
Yeah, you're
privileging in academic. I mean, no, you're just saying that's high for you.
Yeah, like
rule of law.
If 10 million people cross the border illegally, they get put on a path to citizenship. 4 million of them get Social Security. They start voting. They start receiving free healthcare in California.
Yeah.
Why would anybody come here legally? Why would anybody spend tens of thousands of dollars and show up on their court date and be essentially naked in front of immigration customs and all that? Like, why would anybody follow the system and follow the rules? You're incentivizing lawlessness. You're incentivizing.
Yeah. So what do you have to say about Rosa Parks then?
I think, you know this. She was a plant.
She broke the law deliberately.
Yeah, but I mean,
if you allow Negroes to sit in the front of the bus, there will be lawlessness, because that was a central law.
Yeah,
in Alabama. Hello, it was.
Yeah,
in the 1950s. So it was a lawless country. She was.
Well, I don't.
And she just started it too. Then it became a trend. Then Negroes across the South started breaking the law in all sorts of ways, sitting in buses, drinking from fountains, going into whites only areas, eating from lunch counters they weren't allowed to eat in, breaking the law. And it was a lawless country in the South during that time. I don't know. Then there's the Pale Settlement, like my people, when they were herded into ghettos and they were not allowed by law to leave the shtetls, the villages they were assigned to by the Russian Empire. Jews, I'm talking about, and some of them did. Some of them were shot down when they tried to do that. It was the law to not leave East Germany, between 1945 and 1989. And we know this, we've seen this. If you try to climb that fence in East Berlin to get out of East Berlin, you would be shot down. And this is what they exactly did. It was against the law to leave East Germany, just to leave, or to leave the Soviet Union. It was against the law to speak your mind against the government.
No, I'm not.
All
I'm
those
not,
countries.
I'm
and
not
people,
for blindly obeying the law. No. You're misreading me. I'm not for blindly obeying the law.
Okay.
I'm saying that the laws should work so that if they are followed, like virtue is rewarded, like good people are rewarded. Like, I don't think crossing the border arbitrarily is like morally neutral. Like,
I think awesome thing to do. It's a heroic thing to do.
It's
heroic. Of course it is. To make your life better and the life of your family better, to brave that risk. And I've known people who have done that, and they're all heroes. I'm
talking about transparency. I'm saying that the law itself should work, and it should reward people who and
regardless
the law,
of what the regardless of what the law is. Like what do you want all laws to work? Is this your thing? You just want whatever the law is, you want it to work? Is that what you care about?
No, it's like, again, incentivizing tens of millions of people to cross illegally is a slap in the face to the people who, and it's harder to come over here legally. You have to spend a ton of money. And if people who are non-citizens break the law and are treated preferentially and are seen to be treated preferentially, that increases racial tensions between these communities. You get white people like resentful that they're given a free ride here. You get other immigrant communities resentful that they're given a free ride here.
So, hang on. So wait, so you're saying that like Salvadorans and Mexicans get preferential treatment over white immigrants? You know that's objectively false, right? You know that there's quotas for each country, and European countries have higher quotas. You know that,
yes,
right?
But that's legal immigration.
So
that's if it's legal.
For instance, German immigrants to the United States and British and Swedish immigrants have generally no problem getting in and getting citizenship and all that. It takes a while, but they get in. What are you talking about?
Are you saying that?
Yeah. What? Keep going. What? Yeah. What am I saying? What? Yeah, some racist shit, man. Like, clearly, you think we think the same about Swedish immigrants as we do about Salvadoran immigrants, and there's nothing to do with racism, meaning presumptions about those people based on their nationality. That's what I mean by racism. It's not like technically scientific racism, but it's so close, it's indistinguishable. We essentialize what a Salvadoran is, and then we make policy based on that. That's essentially racism, is it not? There are Swedish drug dealers. I've actually personally known a couple. There's Norwegian.
Right. The United States has always accepted immigration from Europe as a priority. We're a nation founded by European settlers. That's totally fine. To prioritize that, to prioritize the culture that built your country to be imported. But
there were more Mexicans here than Swedes. What are you talking about?
More Mexicans than Swedes.
Of course. Again, but remember, Mexico controlled half the country.
Yeah.
It owned half what is now the United States at the time of the founding.
Yeah.
And remained. And then Mexicans, after the United States stole it from Mexico in 1848, many of those Mexicans stayed in what is the United States. If you go to Texas, one of the things I love, it's so fascinating about Texas, you see a lot of upper class, like upper, very, very wealthy rancher families that are like Mexican for dozens of generations who have been there before Texas was part of the United States. No, man, I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just confused by the rapid changing of topic. Like,
how is that?
Yeah.
What? No, I'm saying I'm making an argument that I think the intellectual basis of the anti-immigrant, pro-deportation, pro-Trump arguments are racist. I don't see any other way to explain the motivation, especially because there's so little evidence that illegal immigration has done much of anything to us. There's so little evidence. What has it done to us negatively? I can give you tons of evidence for what it's done to us positively, except for increase the obesity rate. I think that's the only thing you could accuse illegal immigrants of doing is contributing to the obesity rate among Americans by feeding us so well, which most of them work in food. I'm not kidding. And housekeeping and child rearing and landscaping and construction day laborers. That's what they mostly do.
Yeah.
How on earth is this a problem? Like 99% of them just work like fucking dogs to make our material world better every single day. And they take care of our children, rich people's children, but still, that's a lot of people who hire, and they take care of our homes, our houses. How many people have an illegal immigrant cleaning their home? They're in their house by themselves all day long, and we trust them.
This is
It's just
not
wild.
necessarily a positive. It's undercutting the labor market.
No, it's not. Tell me an American citizen, homegrown white woman person who was like kept out of a job as a house cleaner because Salvadoran maids have taken over. I mean, what? No one wants those jobs. That's why they are here, because Americans refuse to take those jobs. That's why they're here. Why is this a bad thing?
This is a transformation of the American economy from an elitist and a racist. I mean, I don't like throwing pejoratives out there. So I mean, it's a transformation of the American economy to favor homegrown white citizens will use their brains, and the undignified work is going to be done by tens of millions of immigrants undercutting them. It sees work with your brain as more preferential to work with your hands, and I think that's totally wrong. Like, I think yeah, Americans have been working with their hands since like before the 70s. Like, this was work done by Americans. We had a fully functioning economy, and then the education revolution happened. Everybody got degrees. Everybody planned that they would be in like finance or tech or law or whatever. And yeah, everybody got degrees, and it for the most part worked up until like right now at this crisis point that we're at. And the actual labor of this work of the United States was undercut by an immigrant class that was strategically brought in against the law to replace and transform the economy. This wasn't something that people voted on, and if it were to be presented this way, I'm certain it would have been voted against. And we're kind of at an economic crisis right now where a bunch of American citizens have useless degrees. They're in tons of debt. They have no skills because we just assumed that we won't be working with our hands anymore. And yeah.
Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen.
I think
it's Wime time, motherfuckers. Here we go.
I think
it's Wime time. He's bringing it.
Yeah. I think it would do. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, finish.
No. Yeah, I think it would do American citizens a lot of good to pick up a rake and start landscaping and start cleaning their own yards.
Damn. Okay, so
and I think it's a racist assumption to assume that we need to import the third world to live comfortable lives here.
To do the shit work for us.
Yeah. I think teenagers are totally capable of doing this, and the United States has been able to do this before.
Well, that's debatable. Have you met Zoomers besides yourself? No. Can I? Let me try something here. I want to do. You just said some shit that was amazing, and I want to separate it into two halves. I think there were two different. Well, there's an argument you made, and then there was a claim you made based on the argument or the analysis. So you made an analysis that is like a socio-cultural economic analysis, which I think is fucking brilliant and like probably the best argument that any immigration restrictionist could make. And it's the best I've heard, Michael, since this new debate about this started many weeks ago. And I want to spend a minute on that. It's amazing about how the immigration regime since 1965,
big business,
labor and business, but more importantly, what you're getting at is the cultural effects of this. It has created in Americans, probably this is true. I think it's true. It makes sense to me. Can't really prove it, but I think it's true, including in yours truly. This assumption that, we don't do work like that. Americans we don't work in we're not fruit pickers. I'm not going to be working in the fields. I'm not going to be taking care of someone else's baby. I'm not going to be like weeding someone else's yard, right? I'm not going to be a goddamn day laborer sitting out there waiting for someone to pick me up to give me a job in front of Home Depot every day. That's a powerful argument. And it's not, and it's cultural and psychological. I think that's probably true, that the influx of armies, and it has been armies since 1965, certainly, of immigrant workforces willing to take those jobs and do those jobs and fill those jobs and dominate those jobs and sometimes monopolize those jobs. By the way, my son used to work in the restaurant business as a cook, and he was always the only English speaking person in the kitchens, and he had sort of trouble. You can have trouble getting jobs in restaurants if you don't speak Spanish. Yeah, that's big. That's big. And so there is now an inbuilt assumption within the American, I would say, middle class, which is the dominant ideology, right? There's a middle class ideology, which is how most of us think about most things. That's what I call the middle. Inserted into that dominant ideology in the American mind since 1965 is this. And I've seen it, and I've just said it myself. I just espoused it myself, and I've heard many, 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 many other people say it. Oh yeah, Americans don't want to or will not do those jobs, and that's why we need these immigrants. That's an awesome argument. I mean, analysis. It's a great analysis. I think it's probably right. Now, then I want to just say that, but then you make a different claim, not so much an analysis, but a claim, I would say, that that's a bad thing. That's where you and I differ. I think it's a good thing. I think, why is it a bad thing? I would rather not me or my son or anybody to work in those jobs, but there are people who are living in places where that kind of a job is a major step up, obviously, or else they wouldn't move here and do this. Major step up from where they are. That's the only reason they would take all those.
It's created a fake fiat economy. And it's created a generation of a lot of people in debt with useless degrees. I think that's a big aspect of it.
Sure.
And it's created a lot of people with no skills, no ability to clean their own, to fix their
toilet,
clean their own toilet, fix their leaky
literally
sink. Yeah, mow their own grass.
Yes, I know this.
Change a flat tire, do their oil. And so
feed themselves.
Yeah, feed themselves. Yeah. So if we were to experience, like, let's say, a 2-week power outage, can you imagine how bad that would be?
Right.
Because
so the question is, can you change the culture by enacting new economic rules, right? Keeping illegal immigrants out of particular jobs and professions? Does that actually cause the culture to change?
I think
in the way that you want, or is there another? In other words, is that the way to go about changing the minds of our pussy ass soy boy generations, beta cuck which is not wrong, by the way. I have seen your people, meaning people under 30. I have seen them in the wild and even in domestic situations, because I'm the father of one. Like, no, it's definitely, I hear what you're saying, man. Not a lot of like self-reliance, self-sufficiency in that my son is different. He's not like this, but in his generation, sure, you see this a lot. And you're not like this either, but in your generation, there's a lot of that.
Very few calloused hands. Yeah.
It's true even in the millennials and even the Gen Xers. You see a whole lot of laziness, especially around, again, those certain areas of life. Like, do you clean your own toilet? Is a great question to ask anybody. That will immediately place you in a particular class. There are particular classes that clean their own toilets and particular classes that don't. But more importantly, they assume that they shouldn't. Now, this is a a deep part of the American tradition, though, right? You know this, right? America has been, in one of the ways it's been different is that, was it Thomas Sowell, I think, said this. Americans who are poor think of themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
Potential millionaires, right? Whereas that's just, you don't find that in other countries. You find people sort of consigned, I suppose, to their class, accepting of where they are economically in class terms. But in America, this is where we're different. Even poor people and working class people have often had these ideas about themselves, self-identification, that's ambitious, one might say extravagant, but that is shorn of barriers to success.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, why is that bad though? See, what I'm saying is that the illegal immigration influx since 1965 has abetted that. I agree with you. It has helped Americans think that they are just temporarily embarrassed millionaires who will be rich one day. Right.
Yeah,
it has helped them because they've had someone else to clean their toilets for cheap.
It's created an unsustainable system.
But why is that bad?
It's unsustainable to continue like this. And you're going to get more racism. The more illegal immigration you get, the worse people are going to look at those immigrants. Like the more you see illegal immigrants succeeding, cutting the line of people who take a ton of time to get in and respect the system and respect the law. People see coming here illegally as a sign of disrespect, and they see their success as preferential treatment and an affront to them. If you want racism to go away, you need a system where everybody feels like that guy's doing well because he deserves it and he respects our laws and he came here and he's contributing just as much as anybody else. But if you have this lawless system, that's going to continue forever. But also, okay, your initial question, right? Isn't it a good thing that poor people see themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires or whatever? I think you see a nihilism out of working class youth, and you see like, it used to be, what do you want to be when you grow up? If you ask somebody what you want to be when they grow up, the number one answer used to be like astronaut. And then like 10 years ago, it was famous. And now it's like influencer, YouTube influencer. You get this.
Did you see the Ryan Long piece about that? Ryan
No.
About, oh man, my wife is now an influencer, and it's hilarious. It's like the end of your life when your wife becomes an influencer.
Yeah,
which is true.
But young men are pushed when there's no good, honest work for them, and they still want to be rich and successful. They're pushed to be like Andrew Tate. They're pushed to go into crypto and to scams, and they're pushed to. They're not, the Wall Street apes situation. They're forced to try to make as much money selling options on the stock market, and they end up getting sports gambling addictions. They just become hopeless. And
sports gambling is underrated. I just want to say that it's a lot of fun, and everyone should try it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it's fun for me because I win all the time, but for other people, it can be a problem.
Exactly, right? Yeah. IU football last year made some money for us. Yeah, it was good. Just don't bet more than $5 at a time. That's all. Then you'll be
they call it an addiction, but they call addiction a disease. But with gambling addiction, it's one of the few diseases where you can get really, really rich.
Exactly. There's a big upside to gambling. There really is.
That's a Norm Macdonald quote.
If you're good at it. You're good at it, then it's really good. So if you think you might be good at it, I really recommend that all of our listeners take it up.
Just like drunk driving. Same
fun.
Deal.
It makes games more fun to watch. It is fun. Just bet $5 to $10 and you'll be fine. And it makes the game more fun. And you might win $20. And that's that. You don't need to. Yeah, it's a good thing. It can be spice to life. Anyway, where were we? Something about vice, addiction.
You get an opioid crisis too if you don't have good gainful employment.
Do you know how good opioids feel when you take them?
Good enough to kill you.
Awesome. Well, if you're in pain all the time, opioids, again, grossly maligned, wonderful invention. We need more opioids. Not kidding. It's good. Why do you think people take it? Because it's bad for you? Because it's bad for you? Is it really? Is wine bad for you?
No, but it's very easy to overdo it and die.
Well, of course.
It's very easy to, oh, this feels good, I'm going to take some more. And next thing you know, I slip into my lungs stop moving and I stop taking in air. That's just
same with driving fast.
Yeah. But
I thought for sure you were once. Weren't you once a libertarian? You were once a libertarian, right?
Well, again,
I feel like you're losing touch with your libertarian.
I'm not an ideologue. I'm not a one size fit all guy on things, and I'm not trying to maximize some ideal of freedom. I'm trying to I'm being pragmatic. I'm seeing what actually works.
Gotcha.
What Bukele does has actually worked. Like, if you talk about freedom, there is more freedom for more people now that the streets in El Salvador are safe. And other policies of his too.
How free is a society in which there is no habeas corpus, due process, but there are no criminals? So like Bukele's El Salvador now, East Berlin in the 1950s. It's another example, right? You know, I don't know. Is that more free? Yes and no. You are now free from violent crime, which is a big freedom. I'm not denying it. But what kind of freedom is that? I mean, I don't have the answer. I just think it's a more complicated, interesting question than we are allowing right now. Like, how much freedom really, how free is El Salvador under Bukele? When you know that you can be scooped up at any minute and sent to CCOT and spend the rest of your life sewing school uniforms. I think they do. They have these huge work factories in that prison. The prisoners are basically forced to work as seamstresses. What is it called when a man does it? Jesus Christ, man. I don't know. Is that free? Like, I'd be scared all the time if I lived in El Salvador. That's not freedom. I'd be scared of a different thing. Instead of MS-13, I'd be scared of the cops arresting me for whatever reason and sending me to that place forever. I don't know.
In general, a system where the laws are few, but they're heavily enforced and they're pretty common sense laws. I've seen like El Salvador, Singapore, Russia to some extent, where people agree on the laws. They're common sense. Don't kill, don't steal, don't sell drugs in public, things like that. And they know for a certainty that they'll be enforced. Those tend to work out better than people are constantly guessing over what the law actually is, and people are scheming against each other to think, oh, that person's going to get away with something, that person's going to get away with something. I might as well be Machiavellian, you know. When people know the laws and trust them, they feel safer to cooperate in that society. That's what I've seen play out in societies like that. And yeah.
If you're found with a bag of marijuana in Singapore, they hang you by the neck until you die. So, and I've heard that Singapore is an awesome place to live. I think, that can be very true. I think it really has to do with what your values are and who you are. I mean, how one is personally, psychologically, what you value. And the really interesting thing about Americans is that generally speaking, Americans have been, since the founding, kind of the canaries in the coal mine of freedom. Meaning that we've been the ones to run headlong toward freedom in many ways. Political freedom, if you call democracy, balance of powers, the constitutional framework, which I think is, probably the freest of all the governmental systems that we've had in the world, allows for the most personal freedom. Bill of Rights, a lot of personal freedom in there that's you can't find anywhere else in the world. But then culturally, my God, I mean, yes, founded by Puritans. Yes, the formal culture of America has always been puritanical, still is. But at the very same time, as we all know, the popular culture, meaning what most people do most of the time, has been the most hedonic craziness you've ever seen. I mean, you name it, in terms of debauchery and hedonism, we have either pioneered it or mastered it here in this country. So,
but I don't want the inmates to be running the asylum. That's the thing. I don't want the inmates to be.
What I'm just saying is, I'm an American in those ways. Like, that's who I'm very much a product of those two things. Like, and that's what I love. That's where I love America profoundly. The incredible, radical, dangerous embrace of freedoms in American culture. And then also, I'm really glad I live in a country with a constitution, with that constitution, with the Bill of Rights. I think it's great. I'm so glad. I love our laws around speech. I think the Brandenburg decision by the Supreme Court is as good as it gets. I couldn't write a better law governing speech, which is that everything goes, everything's legal except for direct incitement. Everything goes except for saying, we should go kill Michael Weimer tomorrow at 2 p.m. at his home. Here's his address. Everything short of that, everything other than that is legal. That's an awesome framework. So I'm really glad for that and grateful for that. What I'm saying is, so I'm very much a product of American culture, very much, even though I'm very radical in some ways. But yeah, no, this is what I love about America. I'm so grateful that I was born here, that I got lucky for that, which is why that if I lived in Singapore, I think I wouldn't like it. I think most Americans who share some of my consciousness, my American consciousness in those ways, just don't like that shit. Doesn't mean we're right. It doesn't mean Singapore is wrong. And in fact, I can totally see all kinds of virtues in living in a society in which security is high and freedom is low. This is the age-old question in political science, right? For thousands of years, we've been debating about that conflict, security versus freedom, and it's always a tension. I'm just saying that I, as an American hedonist and an American who loves thinking and speaking freely, for the most part, yeah, I don't want to live in another place that has a more collectivist, and that's another thing that's going on here, right? There's a collectivism in those states that have high security, which isn't bad. It's not bad. It's just what you want. Some people are built that way. Some people just want that more than freedom. I've known lots of them. Lots of Americans want that more than freedom. So it really comes down to that, which is why we should have smaller governments, more federations, smaller and smaller nation states, so we have more choices.
Yeah,
that match each person's individual values. So that's where I am.
I'm for that too. Yeah. I'm all for, I'm all for that. But in practicality, just our current situation, I'm not endorsing anything really necessarily. I'm just like, I'm not getting my panties in a bunch over what happens at all anywhere ever. Like,
I know, which is great. Which, by the way, everybody listening, don't fucking follow me. I'm a Christian. Yeah. Like I cry about shit, like stupid politics stuff. Michael is, and I mean this. I'm not kidding you. You have I wish I were like you. You have a much more, not much more. You have a detached. You're not emotionally invested in the politics.
Yeah.
And so you don't suffer from it, probably.
Yeah, I'm only voicing the anti-immigration side because I'm sick of it being called racist. Honestly,
yeah, man.
Like that's literally it. Like
which is what I called you for 2 years.
Until
you called me out. I will no longer again. I will only do it elliptically. I will only do it like in a sideways way, underhanded way. So we got 15 minutes. We should talk about some more news.
Yeah. The homosexual incest song that Ye released?
Oh, jeez.
Did you check it out?
And the tweet. Well, I saw the tweet.
No. There's a song. There's a whole song with it.
Cousins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on. This is where he's finally on your side, right? This is the Thaddeus Russell historic transparency, historic art.
I love that Jack immediately invited him onto the show, onto the Perfume Nationalist immediately. And Nick Fuentes was like singing his praises in some podcast, and all my favorite people. No, really, it was a stunning tweet. I read it to my girlfriend in bed this morning, and she was like, "What?
Genius."
she would just she was speechless. How do you respond to that? Should we read it? Do you want to read it? Do you want to post it?
Okay, sure.
Just talk about it.
For those of us who don't know what we're talking about, artist formerly known as Kanye West, Ye, released a song called "Cousins" off of his upcoming album World War III.
Good name.
In which he details that
didn't his naked wife just leave him?
No. That's whatchamacallit. That's tabloid shit. Like, the tabloids make that up every month. The tabloids say, "Oh, she's leaving now. Oh, she's drugged out."
I thought he was tweeting about how she had left him.
Nah, I don't think that ever happened.
The always naked wife, which God bless him for that. I mean, imagine finding an always naked wife. That'd be good.
Oh, man, is it gone?
All right.
Is it gone? I'm sorry.
So all right.
Yeah.
Let's summarize it.
The song is well, man, I'm looking for it. Shoot. Man, he's been reposting a ton of stuff. Anyways, go
ahead.
Yeah. He was he found some gay porn in his mom's closet since then when he was a kid. Yeah. And he acted out on that. It was a source of trauma but he's done hiding everything from the world. And he released a song and a multi-paragraph confession that he and his cousin would fool around up until the age of 14. And the
last line of the tweet was,
what was the last line?
"My name is Ye, and I sucked my cousin's dick until I was 13.
Yeah, 14.
14 from age 6 to 14.
I don't know. I hope not.
I think it was 6. Somebody was 6 when it started. I don't know if it was a cousin or him, but it was many, many years of sucking his cousin's dick. So, and he puts this on Twitter. To how many followers does he have on Twitter?
33.3 million. This is the end of Me Too. This is the end of trying to sexually blackmail celebrities. This is peak transparency. This is everything.
So, yeah. I mean, as the host of the Unregistered podcast, for 4 years there, in which, I was usually trying to elicit these kinds of confessions or sharing from my guests, and often got it, and it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done professionally, those moments and those podcasts. And again, when Unregistered was audio only, which is from 2017 to 2020, that's when you really got a lot of that. You got people, and these were people in politics, like intellectuals and activists and stuff, and journalists, revealing stuff about themselves that they never had ever, even privately, but doing it publicly, in a smaller audience for sure, but big enough audience to make it significant. I mean, that right there is courage that contributes to American freedom, to people's freedom, human freedom, in the profoundest way, because it sort of opens the door for people to reveal the most painful secrets about themselves. It just makes it that much easier for people to reveal stuff like that, which usually is how you feel better about stuff, is releasing it. in this way. Now, do you need to release it to 33 million
Not
people?
to 33.3 million people, not necessarily.
Right.
No.
You could release it just to one person, and that might do the trick. But anyway, but again, that's why he's heroic. That's why he's a Jesus figure. That's why this is martyr behavior, I think. I mean, in some ways, he's dying for our sins in that he is taking the hit, the embarrassment, the shame, whatever it is, so that we can all be more free in revealing our most shameful secrets. So that's awesome. And I think that's all I have to say about it.
Mm-hmm. On Good Friday, I had the pleasure of seeing Cat Williams live in Indianapolis.
Oh my God.
And
I think he might be the greatest living comedian.
Yeah.
I mean, the greatest actor currently, the greatest act, the one who makes me laugh the hardest, I think, is probably Cat Williams, who's currently active. Probably that's right. What'd he do?
I mean, a Cat Williams show is actually kind of predictable.
Yeah,
a little bit. I forget the name of the comics he brought on, but what was unpredictable about it was just the caliber of people he brought with him. Monique was the host, and she was magnanimous. The best performance I saw was Tommy Davidson, if you remember him from Living Color. And they do not make performers like that anymore. People who can sing and dance like that.
That's right. That's right.
And because it's a stadium show, it's super, super physical. Like most of the bits were really, really physical. A lot of interaction with the stool, a lot of singing, a lot of dancing, a lot of music.
He does do a lot of work with the stool, doesn't he?
He does a lot of work with the stool. Yeah,
it's true. It's true. It's called stool work in the business. Cat's the master of it.
A lot of dancing. There were a lot of bits that were just like celebrity impersonations, but it was just dancing for like 2 minutes, and it was hilarious. They had a white guy dance off. Tommy Davidson had a They asked for the flyest white dudes to come down and show their stuff. But
my God,
I bring that up.
I'm just fantasizing about going with you to a BET comic, review showcase or something. That would be awesome. As long as we didn't get called up on stage. Yeah. We're going to make sure I'm going to get tickets at the back of the house because I'm not risking that at all.
But there was a really brilliant bit. I forget the woman who did it, and I'm not going to necessarily do it, but she was talking about how people are observing Diddy and domestic violence and how they look down upon that. Like they see the Diddy and Cassie tape and they're like, oh, how could you ever beat somebody? How could you ever get in a relationship like that? And in more or less words, she's like, let's be honest here. We know exactly what this is like. We've all been around violent men. We've all seen it. We've all rationalized it to ourselves. And with the Ye song, there's just numerous instances of people having dirty secrets like this in their family and feeling like they're the only person in the world who has that.
Right.
And it's beautiful piece of art to see that brought to the light. The song is a banger. Ye knows how to work with young talent. He's been working with Dave Bluntz, who is, if you don't know him, he's the 400-pound rapper who can barely walk and drinks lean the whole time, but he's tuned in with the younger thing. But I don't know how to put this, but that was what I saw on Twitter, is that this story isn't incredible. This story isn't something that makes him weirder and less human. This is something that makes him more relatable. This is something that is actually shockingly normal about him. And it takes the power away from the taboo around these things. So really beautiful cultural moment is all I'm saying.
All right. Fair. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it was really beautiful. I just checked the chat. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Two-thirds think I'm bullying you, and I'm a monster, and a third think you're an idiot.
Yeah. Both are true, actually. That's the thing. Both are true.
The bullying is at least half true. That's for sure. The idiot is definitely not true. Thad is lying. This is good. This is funny. You guys are funny. Somebody got really mad at me. I'm pathetic. Okay. I'm so sick of this show becoming a bitter old man yelling at a young man because he voted. I didn't know that you voted. Oh yeah, I did. That's right.
Yeah.
You voted for Jill Stein. I know. It's all good.
Dude, I would get more hate from liberals if I voted for Jill Stein. That's the funny part.
I just love being a bitter old man. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. 4 minutes. Ukraine. What do you want to do?
Yeah,
Zelenskyy?
we have to talk about Ukraine. Man,
Israel, dead babies. Fucking.
You asked me a question about Vatican II, and then you gave the whole history of MS-13 for 10 minutes. And I wanted to answer your first question about Vatican II.
Okay, you want to defend the church again? Go ahead.
No, not necessarily, but just to give a little history. There's a viral exorcist, Chad Ripperger, who does a lot of conferences, and his stuff is super viral, and all the trad cats are basically aping what he says. But his version of events is that the church became modernist at the turn of the 20th century. And because of that, it started playing with the liturgy. Basically, all the things that were happening at the end of the 19th century, modernism just became just the standard way that class of priests looked at things. They started playing with the liturgy. They started moving things around. There was a ton of changes between like 1912 and 1955, let's say. And broader, more morally, the first moral degeneration of our society wasn't the boomers. It was the greatest generation who fought World War II. And when they went over to fight World War II, you know about this, the brothels. They had drag shows and brothels everywhere they went. The U.S. military went. And
they were smoking and drinking and dancing.
Dancing.
More than any other. And the dancing was a huge part of it, the swing movement. But the smoking and the drinking was out of control for that generation. Yeah, that's part of it. Yep.
And then they came home and became super materialist and started, shopping and all that. Like,
that's right.
That was the loss of tradition. It wasn't the boomers. It was that generation, according to him.
Correct. Yep.
And that predicated Vatican II. Shoot.
Huh. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So I know none of that history, and I defer until I know more. That sounds really plausible and fascinating. Yeah. The Catholic Church started to move left and modernist in the early 20th century. Not in the 1960s.
Yeah. That's good. So by the time you get to Vatican II, that was already the prevailing attitude of a lot of leadership and a lot of higher ups.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And then Vatican II happens, and tens of thousands of nuns quit. They stop because like the habits aren't a thing anymore. And a lot of people quit, and basically we've had like a long reaction to that over the last 60 years.
You know what the priesthood and the nunhood have been about? Having a place for gays and lesbians in the church.
Well, that only exists because of the invention of the identity of homosexuality in the late 19th century.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so that's a 20th century problem, not a 2,000-year problem.
I agree. Before that, they were just sodomites in the church.
Yeah.
But in the 20th century, oh man. But the great thing is that those priests have a lot of fun. Not just with the boys. I know that's happened too, but with each other. I mean, I've heard stories after stories after stories about like Catholic universities in particular. Apparently Loyola Marymount in LA, it's just a fuck party among the priest faculty there, because they all live on campus. They live in dorms, like all together. They're all gay, and it's just a bacchanal. It's awesome.
Pope Francis has called that out in very colorful language for all the trads who don't like him. That's the one thing they do like about him, is that he's called that out.
It's what Dan Savage said. He was raised in a Irish Catholic big family in Chicago, right? I think his dad was a priest or something in the church, and he was training to be he was an altar boy, and Dan Savage said that's what exactly he realized when he was about 16 or 17, that's what the priesthood was for. It was a place to put your gay son, and still he could still be virtuous and Catholic and Christian and in the church even, and be gay. That's how you could do that. That's how you could resolve that contradiction.
Yeah,
which is an amazing thing. Like,
where did he grow up? Where did he grow up? Chicago. Interesting.
Yeah, like hardcore Irish Catholic Chicago. Yeah. And he said, I've heard him say this many times, it's brilliant, but he's right. I've heard many other Catholics say it as well. And we know this. We know how many priests are gay.
I mean,
it's a thing.
I think that's I think chastity is a real thing. I don't know how people feel, but most priests I've seen have been exemplars of chastity, and I think. How
do you know?
I take their word for it, just like anybody else. But I haven't heard any rumor. Yeah, I've only heard one rumor of somebody I've ever known in my life. But yeah. But regardless, like, we should get back to Ukraine. We should say something about Ukraine because it's in the title. But what I just wanted to say is that just timeline wise, like you say, policy is the reaction to something happening underneath. So to clarify, to see Vatican II as the point where the church became liberal, it might be putting the cart in front of the horse. Is all I'm saying. Well,
totally.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Zelenskyy made an announcement. Did he? That we will continue, we meaning Ukraine, will continue to fight without the United States' help.
Yeah, after the meetings in London.
And of course, the EU, the Brits, the French, Macron made some crazy statement recently. Starmer, all of them have said, "Oh, we will support Ukraine in every way possible, including militarily, in perpetuity, even if the United States withdraws its support." And meanwhile, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, I think I saw him say this today, in fact, that in so many words, he said, well, we're not going to support this war anymore. It looks like it's going to continue. It looks like the Russians and the Ukrainians will not come to terms, strongly suggesting that's because of Zelensky's hardline position. But the Trump administration's rhetoric for months now is that we're done with it. And so if you're going to continue fighting this war, okay, but we're not going to be involved. So it's on the verge of becoming a totally European war. Which is good in that my government is no longer part of it, and I like that, but also scares the shit out of me because when was the last time we had an all-European war? Right? And the ferocity and the ideological mania of the Western European government leaders, and this is every single one of them, clearly wants war with Russia. And the fact, combined with the fact that Russia now has won the Ukraine war and controls 20% of that country and is not giving it up.
Well,
it's looking bad. It's looking bad. It's looking like in the near term there's going to be another European war. And the only question is whether or not the United States is involved in it. And then the next question is that a good thing or a bad thing in terms of numbers of casualties? Would it be actually, maybe Thad Russell is saying this, it might be better if the United States is involved just to keep a lid on the casualties, which is what the United States has often done, especially in the Middle East, especially with Israel. Like Israel, if it were left to its own devices, would have killed 2, 3, 4, 5 times as many people over the last 50 years if the United States hadn't constantly, until recently, told them to stop at a certain point, to stop the slaughter. So I don't know. It's scary, but I am glad the United States is, so far, Trump has been pretty good about this and solid about this, exiting that conflict, which is what it should do around the world. So anyway, good luck, everybody.
You see this kind of with Israel too. Like, NATO countries haven't had to fight their own wars, so they kind of have like a childish naivete about them that Europe can take on Russia, and that like Zelenskyy is, they have the same, that this is just going to work out, that these people with no standing military, no fighter jets, no tanks are going to be able to fight this war on their own. Yeah.
The UK, what is it? I said this a few weeks ago. The UK now has basically no tanks left because they've sent all their tanks to Ukraine. Germany, I think, has no more tanks because they've sent all their tanks to Ukraine. I mean, artillery, I believe artillery shells, artillery ammunition. I believe the NATO countries in Europe have almost none left because they sent them all to Ukraine. And of course, most of those tanks are now burning heaps of rubble on the fields of Ukraine. I don't know. It's scary. I am nervous about Europe. I am nervous about people who live in Europe in the next 1 to 5 years. I'm quite worried there's going to be an actual direct military conflict between Russia and Western Europe. It's horrific to think about. But I guess at least the United States won't be involved until it becomes impossible for us not to be involved. That's the problem I'm worried about. Anyway, we should go.
Yeah.
If you're still watching this, what? If you're still watching this, you should just become a patron. Because we're going to die if you don't. Seriously, go to patreon.com/unregistered. Help us out. Super cheap, monthlies, just to keep us going. Patreon.com/unregistered. Join at any level, and an added bonus, and this is awesome. If you become a member at any level, you get to have access. You get to come to our special after show, the party, after every Unreported, beginning right now, every Wednesday after Unreported. Michael and I hang out with our patrons and have an awesome time. It's the highlight of my week. It has been for many years. We've been doing this for a long time. It's super fun and very loose. You can be completely anonymous. You don't have to show your face or anything. You can come and just watch, or you can come and participate and hang out and talk and yell at me or whatever you want to do. So become a patron either way. Patreon.com/unregistered. Michael, you were awesome. We had a little fight there, but I think we came through it okay.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the part of that story that I wanted to get to, which is how the Democratic Party is like going all in on this as a thing. But we didn't. Yeah, but we had like 20 other things. We didn't get to make fun of Tim Pool for wearing a beanie in the briefing room.
I like it. He looks like no one else. That's good. That's a good thing.
It's good for his own marketing, honestly.
He does not look like CNN. That's good. Yeah. Is it not? He does not look like Fox News. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Diversity, man. I'm all about diversity. All right, man. You're awesome. Let's go.
Cool.
Patreon.com/unregistered. Peace.
Shibuya.